On this morning, 177 B-24 Liberators of the United States 9th Air Force lifted off from Libya to attack the refineries around Ploiești, the main source of natural oil for Nazi Germany. 162 reached the target area. 53 are lost, and more than 300 aircrew are killed or go missing in one of the costliest single missions of the war for the United States. Allied planners have judged that destroying these plants could remove up to 40% of Axis refining capacity in southeastern Europe and cripple Germany's fuel supply. Initial estimates after the raid claim success. Yet, within weeks, the Enemy Oil Committee in London reports no curtailment of overall product output, because the refineries had been running below maximum capacity and emergency repairs restored production quickly. The central question emerges. If one oil region could justify such losses and such defenses, how far had Hitler already reshaped the Balkans to protect Romania's oil and keep the German war machine moving? Year-end production reports arrive in Bucharest. The numbers are compiled with bureaucratic precision. 6.61 million tons of crude oil extracted nationally in 1938, much of it from Prahova County around Ploiești. The clerks at the Ministry of Industry and Commerce file these figures alongside export contracts, railway manifests, and refinery capacity statements. Oil is recorded as a budget pillar and export commodity, not yet as the central pivot of a future continental war. Romania stands among the world's top 6 oil producers. Western companies, Astra Romana, Stoa Romana, Romano Americana, hold stakes in the fields and refineries. French, British, and American capital flows into drilling operations and refinery expansions. Trade patterns still assume continued Western economic presence. No one in the ministry imagines that within a decade these same refineries will become military targets of the highest strategic importance. The Ploiești system is a network of wells, gathering lines, early pipelines, tank farms, and refineries. Astra Romana operates one of the largest plants. Concordia and Stoa Romana handle significant volumes. Each barrel holds 42 gallons. A simple conversion. 1 metric ton of crude equals roughly 7.3 barrels. These numbers will matter later, when planners calculate bomb loads and expected damage. An interwar statement describes Romania as the second largest exporter of oil products in Europe. The language is commercial, focused on revenue and foreign exchange. Oil is seen as an economic asset, not a military one. The refineries run at steady capacity, shipping products west by rail and barge, south to the Mediterranean, north towards Central Europe. This export-oriented structure makes Romania a natural object of great power economic diplomacy. Every major nation wants access to Romanian crude. British and French firms negotiate long-term contracts. German buyers appear with increasing frequency, offering industrial machinery and arms in exchange for oil. The Romanians balance these offers carefully, trying to maintain independence while modernizing their armed forces. But the balance is already shifting. By the late 1930s, nearly half of Romania's oil exports flow to Germany. The figure appears in trade statistics without alarm. German demand is strong, German payment terms are attractive, and German political pressure is not yet overwhelming. The dependence forms quietly, beneath the surface of commercial transactions. The oil fields around Ploiești continue producing. The refineries continue processing. The barges continue moving up the Danube. And in Berlin, economic planners begin to realize that Romania is not just a supplier, it is the supplier. The one source that can bridge the gap between Germany's growing military needs and its limited domestic production. Economic dependence is forming before formal alliance or occupation. The numbers tell the story. Exports to Germany rise year by year, Western buyers lose market share, and Romanian authorities find themselves unable to refuse German requests without risking political isolation. The oil that had been a commercial asset is becoming a strategic weapon, and the weapon is pointed at Romania itself. War begins. A briefing in Berlin summarizes German fuel balances. The numbers are stark. Germany consumes over 7 million tons of oil products annually. Domestic production covers only a fraction. Pre-war imports from the United States, Venezuela, and the Dutch East Indies are now cut off by British naval blockade. The shortfall is immediate and severe. Planners around Hermann Göring's 4-year plan expect that a combination of synthetic fuel, captured stocks, and short campaigns will bridge the gap. Synthetic fuel plants, coal hydrogenation and Fischer-Tropsch processes are ramping up production. By 1943, synthetic fuels will account for over 50% of Germany's liquid fuel supply. But in September 1939, these plants are not yet online in sufficient numbers. The Wehrmacht needs fuel now, not in 3 years. Synthetic fuel production is costly and electricity-intensive. Each plant requires massive coal inputs, high-pressure reactors, and complex chemical processes. The facilities are large, fixed, and vulnerable to bombing. German planners know this. They also know that natural crude from Romania arrives ready-made, requiring only refining to produce gasoline, diesel, and lubricants. A wartime German analysis characterizes Romanian oil as essential strategic raw material for the war economy. The phrase appears in economic ministry documents and Wehrmacht logistics reports. It is not propaganda. It is a sober assessment. Without Romanian crude, German fuel balances do not close. The Reich Economic Ministry compiles statistical tables forecasting synthetic output growth. The projections are optimistic, synthetic fuels rising from roughly 22% of total supply in 1940 to more than half by 1943. But even these projections assume steady imports from Romania and other European sources. If those imports fail, the entire system collapses. Once overseas imports are blocked, approximately 1/4 of German oil arrives by rail and barge from European sources. Romania, the Soviet Union until 1941, and Austria. Of these suppliers, Romania is the largest. Soviet deliveries under the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact will end with Operation Barbarossa. Austrian crude is minimal. That leaves Romania as the dominant overland supplier. Germany's structural deficit creates a strategic imperative: secure Romanian oil at any cost. Economic pressure, political manipulation, and eventually military force will all be applied to this single objective. The deficit is not a temporary problem. It is a permanent feature of the German war economy, a vulnerability that will shape every major strategic decision from 1940 onward. The numbers drive the policy. 7 million tons consumed, less than 3 million tons produced domestically, equals a shortfall of over 4 million tons annually. Romanian oil can cover much of that gap, but only if Romania remains compliant, stable, and under German control. Berlin's attention turns south, toward the Ploiești oil fields and the refineries that keep the Wehrmacht moving. A confidential protocol is signed. Romania agrees to export 600,000 tons of oil products to Germany in exchange for war material worth 100 million Reichsmarks. The agreement signals a shift away from Western buyers. British and French firms watch nervously as German economic missions arrive with contracts, credit arrangements, and arms offers that Romania cannot refuse. Romanian leaders hope to balance German, British, and French influence while modernizing their armed forces. King Carol II and his advisors believe they can extract maximum benefit without committing fully to any side. In practice, German demands escalate. After the fall of France in June 1940, British and French economic leverage collapsed. Germany stands alone as Romania's major arms supplier and largest export market. Ion Antonescu emerges as a central figure. In September 1940, he became conjugator leader of the Romanian state. Antonescu is pro-German but pragmatic. He understands that Romania's survival depends on satisfying Berlin's demands while preserving some measure of national autonomy. The balance is precarious. German patience is limited. German capital penetrates Romanian oil companies. Stakes previously held by Anglo-American firms are bought out or forcibly transferred. German managers take positions on refinery boards. Wehrmacht fuel planners establish direct ties to individual refineries, assigning priority rail paths, Danube barge contracts, and clearing account arrangements that settle oil deliveries against arms shipments. Technology and logistics integrate. Romanian refineries are tied into Reich economic planning. Each major plant, Astra Romana, Stoa Romana, Romano Americana, Concordia, receives production quotas and delivery schedules set in Berlin. Tank farms and loading terminals are upgraded to handle larger volumes. Danube barge traffic increases. Rail lines are reinforced to carry heavier fuel shipments north and west toward Germany and the front lines. A German policy paper describes a coherent offensive strategy to secure Romanian oil with diplomatic and economic means. Anticipating later military guarantees, the language is bureaucratic, but the meaning is clear. Germany will use whatever tools are necessary to control Romanian oil. Diplomacy is preferred. Force is available. By 1940 and 1941, Romania has effectively become Germany's principal overland oil supplier. Exports rose dramatically, from approximately 2.8 million barrels in 1938 to roughly 13 million barrels in 1941, nearly half of Romanian production. The increase reflects both expanded refinery capacity and intensified German pressure. Yet even this growth is not enough. German memoranda continue to describe Romanian deliveries as insufficient. Berlin demands more. Higher quotas, faster refinery construction, accelerated drilling programs. Romanian authorities resist, citing depletion concerns and domestic fuel needs. The tension is structural. Germany needs more oil than Romania can or will supply. The gap will widen as the war expands. The economic penetration is complete. German control of Romanian oil is achieved without invasion, without occupation, without formal annexation. Contracts, loans, arms deals, and political manipulation accomplish what military force might have required. But the arrangement is fragile. It depends on Romanian compliance, continued production, and secure transport routes. Any disruption, sabotage, bombing, political upheaval could collapse the entire system. And disruptions are coming. German units of 12th Army and 2nd Army cross into Yugoslavia and Greece under Operations 25 and Marita. Orders reference the Yugoslav coup of late March, a sudden change of government that overturned Yugoslavia's pact with Germany, and Italian setbacks in Greece, where Mussolini's invasion had stalled in the mountains. Publicly, Hitler cites political retaliation and Allied solidarity. Internal directives state a double objective: secure the southern flank before Operation Barbarossa, the planned invasion of the Soviet Union, and safeguard Romanian oil fields from British air attack launched from Greek bases. The second objective is rarely mentioned in public communiques but dominates OKW planning documents. British forces have moved into mainland Greece to support the Greek army. RAF squadrons operate from airfields on the mainland and from Crete. Wellington and Blenheim medium bombers are within range of Ploiești. German staff calculations show that British aircraft stationed in Greece can reach the Romanian oil fields and Danube barge traffic with relative ease. A permanent Allied air presence in Greece would endanger both refineries and transport routes critical to German fuel supply. The Balkan campaigns are swift. Yugoslav resistance collapses within days. Greek and British forces retreat under overwhelming German firepower and tactical coordination. Luftwaffe air superiority was established early. German mechanized columns advance rapidly along multiple axes. By late April, Yugoslavia had surrendered. By early May, Greece falls. British forces evacuate to Crete and Egypt. A German campaign analysis notes that British entry into Greece brought the Romanian oil fields within bombing range. The phrase captures the strategic calculation behind the entire operation. The Balkan invasions are not peripheral actions. They are defensive measures designed to eliminate Allied air bases that threaten Germany's primary oil source. The speed of victory is striking. German forces occupy every coastline from the Adriatic to the western Black Sea within 6 weeks. The entire Balkan Peninsula is under Axis control. No Allied aircraft remain within easy range of Ploiești. The oil lifeline appears secure. But the campaigns delayed Operation Barbarossa by several weeks. Historians will debate whether this delay costs Germany a quick victory in the Soviet Union. What is not debated is the reason for the delay: protecting Romanian oil. Hitler prioritizes the Balkans over the Soviet Union because fuel supply takes precedence over territorial conquest. Without oil, the Panzers cannot move. Without the Panzers, Barbarossa cannot succeed. By late April 1941, German planners temporarily considered the Ploiești lifeline safe from British attack. Luftwaffe units redeploy north for Barbarossa. Wehrmacht logistics staff finalize fuel allocation plans that assume uninterrupted Romanian deliveries. The Romanian government, now firmly aligned with Germany, increases refinery output to meet Wehrmacht demands. The Balkan campaigns are over. The oil fields are defended. The next phase of the war can begin. But the brief British presence in Greece has demonstrated a vulnerability that German commanders cannot ignore. Ploiești is within bomber range, and any future Allied advance into the Mediterranean will bring that threat back. A reconnaissance mosaic compiled by Allied intelligence shows concentric rings of flak positions, searchlights, and airfields around Ploiești. The defenses are far denser than expected. Early Allied intelligence had treated Romania as a peripheral target, lightly defended and vulnerable to strategic bombing. By 1943, updated assessments classify Ploiești as one of the most heavily defended areas on the continent. Luftwaffe General Alfred Gerstenberg commands air defense in Romania. His task is simple: protect the oil fields and refineries at all costs. Gerstenberg has authority to requisition flak batteries, fighter squadrons, and radar installations from across occupied Europe. He uses that authority aggressively. Ploiești becomes a fortress. The order of battle for 1 August 1943 provides a snapshot: 36 heavy flak batteries, 16 light and medium flak batteries, and 57 fighters, both German and Romanian, allocated to the Ploiești defense zone. The density of anti-aircraft guns per square mile rivals Berlin. For a target this size, the concentration is extraordinary. Romanian Air Force formations operate alongside German units. IR-80 fighters, Romanian-built aircraft based on Polish designs, provide local air defense. German Me-109 and Me-110 fighters deploy to forward airfields within minutes of the refineries. Radar stations track incoming formations from over 100 miles away. Searchlights illuminate night bombers. Smoke generators obscure key installations during raids. The heavy flak batteries use 88mm guns, the same weapons that gained fame as anti-tank guns in North Africa. At Ploiești, they fire upward, throwing shells to 20,000 feet and beyond. Each battery contains 4 to 6 guns with overlapping fields of fire. The shells are fused to burst at specific altitudes, creating lethal zones through which bombers must fly. The light and medium batteries use smaller calibers, 20mm and 37mm, effective against low-flying aircraft. An Allied intelligence appreciation highlights Ploiești's defenses as second only to Berlin among industrial targets. The comparison is not hyperbole. By mid-1943, only the German capital had more anti-aircraft guns and fighters dedicated to its defense. For an oil-producing region in a secondary theater, the allocation of resources is immense. German fears of an Eastern Ruhr drive the buildup. The Ruhr Valley in western Germany is the industrial heart of the Reich, heavily bombed by the RAF throughout the war. Luftwaffe commanders worry that Ploiești could become a similar target, a concentrated industrial zone under sustained Allied attack. The solution is overwhelming firepower, enough flak and fighters to make any raid prohibitively expensive. The defensive system has one vulnerability. It is static. The guns cannot move. The radar stations are fixed. The fighter airfields are known. Allied planners can see the defenses on reconnaissance photographs and can plan routes to avoid the heaviest concentrations. But avoidance means longer flight paths, lower altitudes, and greater exposure to other threats. There is no easy way to attack Ploiești. By mid-1943, Ploiești's anti-aircraft density rivals that of many core Reich targets, guaranteeing high losses for any attacking force. The fortress is complete. The oil fields are defended, and Allied planners are studying those reconnaissance photographs, calculating tonnage and loss rates, preparing for the most ambitious oil raid of the war. A logistics diagram compiled by Wehrmacht transport commands traces the path of crude oil from wellheads to refineries, then by rail and barge along the Danube to German and Italian depots. The system is complex, redundant, and vulnerable at multiple points. Crude oil flows from Prahova County wells through gathering lines to tank farms near the refineries. Astra Romana, Stoa Romana, Romano Americana, and Concordia process the crude into gasoline, diesel, kerosene, and lubricants. Each refinery has specific capacity limits and product specializations. Astra Romana focuses on aviation fuel. Stoa Romana produces diesel for naval and ground forces. Romano Americana handles lubricants and specialty products. From the refineries, products move by rail and barge. Rail lines run north through Transylvania toward Hungary and Germany. Danube ports at Giurgiu and Altenita load barges for transport upriver to Vienna, Bratislava, and German depots along the river. Barge traffic moves day and night, 60,000 to 80,000 barrels per day in 1941 and 1942. The Danube is the primary route for bulk shipments. Romanian economic ministries and Wehrmacht transport commands coordinate these flows. Priority shipments receive dedicated rail cars and barge convoys. Non-priority products wait. The system operates at near capacity, with little slack for disruptions. Any damage to refineries, rail yards, or Danube infrastructure immediately reduces throughput. German planners anticipate steadily rising exports as Romania becomes more tightly integrated into Reich economic planning. They request higher quotas, faster refinery expansions, and dedicated transport assets. Romanian authorities resist, concerned about reservoir depletion and domestic fuel needs. The tension is constant. Germany demands more. Romania delivers less than demanded. A telegram from General Wilhelm Keitel to Ion Antonescu in October 1942 illustrates German anxiety. In the name of the Führer, I approach Your Excellency with a request. The phrasing is diplomatic, but the meaning is clear. Deliver more oil or face consequences. Antonescu responds with promises of increased production, but the increases never match German expectations. Tank storage sites provide buffer capacity. Refineries store products in large cylindrical tanks, each holding thousands of barrels. The tanks allow refineries to continue operating even when transport is disrupted. But storage is finite. If rail and barge shipments stop, tanks fill up, refineries must cut production, and the entire system backs up. Redundancy and dispersal reduce bombing impact. Each refinery has multiple processing units, tank farms at different locations, and connections to multiple rail lines. Damage to one unit or one tank farm does not shut down the entire plant. This dispersal frustrates Allied bombing planners, who discover that even heavy raids leave some capacity intact. The paradox emerges. Romania is politically dominated by Germany but still restricts oil exports. Berlin cannot simply seize the oil fields and run them at maximum capacity. The wells are finite resources. Overpumping risks long-term depletion. Romanian petroleum engineers insist on conservation measures. German fuel planners demand immediate maximum output. The conflict is unresolved throughout the war. By mid-1941, the Ploiești Danube-Germany oil lifeline was fully operational, moving hundreds of thousands of barrels per month north to the Reich and to frontline depots. The system is efficient, well-defended, and essential. It is also irreplaceable. No other source can provide the volumes Germany needs, and Allied planners know it. 13 B-24D Liberators of the Halpro detachment approach Ploiești at altitude after a long flight from Egypt. The mission is the first United States Army Air Force's bombing of a European target. Colonel Harry Halverson commands the detachment, a provisional unit originally intended for operations in China but diverted to the Middle East after the fall of Burma. The B-24s are new, long-range heavy bombers capable of carrying substantial bomb loads over distances exceeding 1,000 miles. Halverson Project is an experiment in strategic bombing from Middle Eastern bases. Ploiești is the test case. If American heavy bombers can reach Romanian targets from Egypt, the entire Balkans and southern Europe come within range. German and Romanian commands are surprising. They had not yet fully adjusted to the idea of long-range heavy bombers attacking from the Middle East. Flak defenses engage the bombers, but the response is incomplete. Fighters scramble late. Several B-24s are damaged, but most reach their targets and drop their bomb loads. The physical damage is modest. Individual refineries are struck. Fires break out. Production is disrupted for days. But the tonnage dropped, roughly 30 tons total, is insufficient to cause long-term damage. Emergency repairs restore most capacity within 2 weeks. The raid is tactically interesting but strategically insignificant. An Allied post-action report classifies the raid as primarily of reconnaissance and trial value. The phrase captures the mission's true purpose. Test the feasibility of long-range strikes, gather intelligence on defenses, and demonstrate American presence in the European theater. From this perspective, the raid succeeds. Halpro proves that Ploiești is vulnerable, that American bombers can reach it, and that future raids are possible. RAF units had previously conducted smaller-scale night raids on Romanian targets, including attacks on Danube ports and rail yards. These raids caused minimal damage but alarmed German and Romanian authorities. The appearance of British bombers over Romania demonstrates that the Balkans are not beyond Allied reach. Each raid triggers further expansion of air defenses. The immediate consequence of Halpro is accelerated fortification. Flak batteries are reinforced. Fighter squadrons redeploy to Romanian airfields. Camouflage measures are implemented. Smoke generators, dummy installations, dispersed storage. Luftwaffe General Gerstenberg receives additional resources and authority. By late 1942, Ploiești's defenses have thickened considerably. The raid also provides intelligence. American planners study reconnaissance photographs, damage assessments, and crew debriefs. They learn refinery layouts, identify critical processing units, and map defensive positions. This intelligence will shape future operations, including the planning of Operation Tidal Wave a year later. Several B-24s are lost to mechanical failure and defensive fire. Crews are killed or captured. For the modest damage achieved, the cost is relatively high. But the raid establishes a precedent. American heavy bombers from Africa can reach Ploiești. German analysts can neither ignore nor fully counter this fact. The strategic implications are clear. If the United States commits substantial bomber forces to the Mediterranean theater, Romanian oil is at risk. The Halpro raid was the first blow against Ploiești. It is not the last. Within 14 months, American planners will return with 10 times the bomber strength, a detailed operational plan, and a willingness to accept massive losses for the chance of crippling Germany's primary oil source. Allied enemy oil committee tables are compared to German fuel balance sheets. Both sets of figures highlight Romania as a critical node. The convergence is striking. Analysts on both sides, using different sources and methods, reach the same conclusion. Romanian oil is indispensable to German operations. German leadership assumes that a combination of rising synthetic production and steady Romanian imports will sustain operations in the Soviet Union and other theaters. Fuel allocation plans for 1943 assume that total availability, domestic crude, Romanian imports, synthetic output, and minor European sources will meet Wehrmacht requirements. The assumptions are optimistic but not absurd. Synthetic plants are ramping up. Romanian deliveries continue. Captured stocks from occupied territories provide temporary buffers. Allied analysts argue that oil is Germany's Achilles heel. The Enemy Oil Committee, a joint Anglo-American body, compiles detailed assessments of German fuel sources, consumption rates, and vulnerabilities. The committee's reports emphasize that sustained attacks on refineries and transport could immobilize the Wehrmacht. Fuel shortages would ground the Luftwaffe, strand Panzer divisions, and cripple naval operations. The logic is straightforward. Cut the oil, win the war. Statistical breakdowns show the structure of German oil supply by approximate percentage. Romanian crude and products account for 30 to 40% of total liquid fuel availability, depending on the month and theater. Synthetic fuels provide another 40 to 50%. Domestic German crude, minimal compared to demand, contributes 5 to 10%. Other European sources, captured French and Dutch stocks, limited Soviet deliveries before 1941, fill gaps temporarily but are not reliable long-term. The dependency on Romania is structural, not temporary. Synthetic plants require years to build and are vulnerable to bombing. Domestic German fields are nearly exhausted. No other foreign source can match Romanian volumes. If Romanian oil is lost, the entire German fuel system collapses. Casablanca Conference planning papers in January 1943 designate Ploiești as a vital target for a special operation. The decision reflects the Enemy Oil Committee's analysis and broader Anglo-American strategic priorities. Oil is the bottleneck. Ploiești is the largest single component of that bottleneck. Therefore, Ploiești must be attacked with maximum force. The risk calculation is stark. Planners estimate that a concentrated one-day strike could remove up to 40% of Axis refining capacity in southeastern Europe. This figure drives operational planning. If 40% of capacity can be destroyed, German fuel availability will drop correspondingly. Panzer divisions will stall. Luftwaffe sorties will decrease. Naval operations will contract. The expected strategic impact justifies extreme measures. But the planners also recognize the cost. Ploiești is heavily defended. Any large-scale attack will incur significant losses. Preliminary estimates suggest up to 25% bomber losses, far higher than acceptable rates for most missions. Yet the potential gain crippling Germany's fuel supply makes the risk acceptable. Both sides understand the stakes. Germany knows it cannot lose Romanian oil and survive. The Allies know they cannot win quickly without cutting German oil. The stage is set for a direct confrontation. Operation Tidal Wave, the largest and most ambitious oil raid of the war, designed to strike at the strategic heart of the German war machine in a single day. The planning begins. The bombers prepare, and the defenders around Ploiești wait. Training sequences in the Libyan desert show B-24 groups flying at 200 to 800 feet over wooden refinery mock-ups. The practice runs are a complete break from standard United States Army Air Forces doctrine, which emphasizes high-altitude precision bombing from 20,000 feet or higher. For Ploiești, commanders gamble on low-level penetration to avoid radar detection and achieve surprise. Colonel Jacob Smart, one of the operation's architects, proposes the low-level approach. Smart argues that high-altitude raids over Ploiești would face overwhelming flak concentrations and fighter interception. Flying low, below radar coverage and beneath the effective altitude of heavy flak might allow bombers to reach their targets before defenses fully react. The plan accepts increased vulnerability to light flak and small arms fire in exchange for reduced exposure to heavy guns and fighters. General Louis Brereton commands the United States 9th Air Force in North Africa. General Uzel Ent serves as mission commander. 5 bomb groups are assigned: 44th, 93rd, 98th, 376th, and 389th. Each group will attack specific refinery targets: Astra Romana, Stoa Romana, Romano Americana, Concordia, and others. The mission plan divides the Ploiești complex into distinct objectives, assigning each group a primary target and alternates. 177 B-24s are planned for the mission. The staging distance from Benghazi to Ploiești exceeds 1,000 miles, round trip over 2,000 miles. Fuel loads must be maximized. Bomb loads are substantial but not maximum, balanced against fuel requirements for the long flight. Each aircraft carries delayed fuse bombs designed to explode after the attacking aircraft have cleared the target area. A planning document describes Tidal Wave as the longest major bombing mission from base to target undertaken to date. The description is accurate. No previous United States Army Air Forces operation has attempted a strike at this distance, at this altitude with this many aircraft, against a target this heavily defended. The mission is unprecedented in scale and ambition. Training intensifies. Mock targets in the desert replicate refinery layouts. Crews practice low-level navigation, bomb runs at rooftop height, and formation flying at extreme low altitude. The training is dangerous. Several aircraft crash during practice runs. Crews are replaced. The schedule is relentless. Intelligence briefings provide detailed maps, reconnaissance photographs, and target folders. Each crew studies its assigned refinery, location, layout, key processing units, storage tanks, power plants. Planners emphasize precision. Bombs must hit specific installations to maximize damage. Near misses are wasted ordnance. The risk calculation is explicit. Internal estimates foresee up to 25% losses, roughly 40 aircraft and 400 men. For a single mission, this is extraordinarily high. Standard attrition rates are 2 to 5% per mission. Tidal wave projects losses 5 to 10 times higher. Commanders accept the risk on the assumption that the mission will drastically reduce German fuel availability, shortening the war and saving more lives in the long run. Crews are briefed on the strategic importance of the target. They are told that destroying Ploiești will cripple German operations across multiple theaters, from the Eastern Front to North Africa to the Atlantic. The briefing is motivational but also factual. Ploiești is that important. The mission is worth the cost. On the eve of the raid, final preparations are completed. Aircraft are fueled and armed. Crews rest. Weather forecasts are reviewed. Routes are confirmed. And in Romania, Luftwaffe General Gerstenberg waits, confident that his defenses can repel any attack. Dust-shrouded takeoff from Libya. 177 B-24s lift off in waves, forming up over the Mediterranean. Formation difficulties begin immediately. Dust and turbulence scatter aircraft. Some groups fall behind. Navigation becomes problematic as the formation crosses the sea and enters Romanian airspace. Clouds obscure landmarks. The lead navigator makes an error near the initial point. Instead of approaching Ploiești from the planned direction, the bomber stream drifts off course. Some groups realize the mistake and attempt to correct it. Others continue on the wrong heading. The coordinated, simultaneous strike collapses into a series of uncoordinated individual attacks. The first groups arrive over Ploiești disorganized and from unexpected directions. Luftwaffe fighters scramble. Flak batteries open fire. Romanian IR-80 fighters join the defense. The element of surprise, the entire rationale for the low-level approach, is lost. Bombers approach from multiple headings at different times, allowing defenders to concentrate fire on each wave in turn. Some groups bomb their primary targets. Others, unable to locate assigned refineries amid smoke and confusion, attack secondary targets or targets of opportunity. Bombs strike Astra Romana, Stoa Romana, and other plants. Fires erupt. Explosions cascade through processing units. Smoke billows thousands of feet into the air. But the damage is uneven. Some refineries are heavily hit. Others are barely touched. Defensive fire is intense. 88mm heavy flak throws shells into the bomber formations. 20mm and 37mm light flak rakes low-flying aircraft. Machine guns fire from rooftops and ground positions. German and Romanian fighters press attacks from multiple angles. B-24s fall from the sky, trailing smoke and flame. Parachutes blossom as crews bail out. Some aircraft explode in mid-air. Others crash into refineries or open fields. The numbers tell the story. 53 B-24s are destroyed. 44 to defensive fire. The remainder to accidents, mechanical failure, or internment in neutral countries. 55 aircraft were damaged, many severely. Approximately 310 aircrew are killed or missing. Over 100 are captured or interned. The loss rate exceeds 30%, the highest for any major United States Army Air Forces mission in Europe. Damage to the refineries is significant but not crippling. Initial reports claim substantial success. Reconnaissance photographs show fires, destroyed tanks, and damaged processing units. Allied planners estimate that refining capacity has been reduced by 40%, matching pre-mission expectations. But the estimates are wrong. The Enemy Oil Committee's later note reveals the truth. Despite local destruction, there was no curtailment of overall product output. The refineries had been operating below capacity due to crude supply constraints and labor shortages. Emergency repairs are rapid. Undamaged units increase throughput to compensate for destroyed facilities. Within weeks, Ploiești's net output equals or exceeds pre-raid levels. The paradox is stark. The mission is tactically one of the bloodiest for the United States Army Air Forces, Yet strategically it fails to produce the expected long-term reduction in German fuel supply. 53 bombers and over 300 men are lost for temporary disruption that is repaired within a month. Post-mission analyses struggle with this result. Some commanders argue that the mission succeeded in damaging key installations and would have been decisive if defenses had been lighter. Others conclude that single-raid approaches are inherently flawed against dispersed, resilient targets like Ploiești. The debate shapes future planning. Within weeks, Ploiești's net output equals or exceeds pre-raid levels, forcing Allied planners to rethink their approach. The one-day offensive has failed. A new strategy is required. Sustained, systematic attacks over months, not a single concentrated blow. The oil campaign will continue, but under different assumptions and with different methods. Allied staff officers review bombing results in memoranda that now treat oil as the most vulnerable single-target system in the German war economy. The shift in language reflects a shift in strategy. Earlier hopes for a decisive one-day strike are formally abandoned. New analyses argue that only a sustained series of attacks on refineries, synthetic plants, storage depots, and transport nodes can cripple German mobility. The oil plan emerges from these analyses. Proponents include General Karl Spaatz, commander of United States Strategic Air Forces in Europe, and senior planners in Royal Air Force Bomber Command. The plan calls for concentrated, repeated attacks on oil targets across Germany and occupied Europe, including Ploiești. The objective is not temporary disruption but permanent reduction of German fuel supply. The 15th Air Force, newly formed in Italy, became the primary instrument for attacks on Ploiești. The 15th operates B-17 and B-24 heavy bombers, escorted by P-38 Lightning and P-51 Mustang long-range fighters. Italian bases place Ploiești within comfortable range for high-altitude raids. The low-level approach of tidal wave is discarded. All future attacks will use standard high-altitude tactics. Formations at 20,000 feet or higher, precision bombing through the Norden bombsite, and heavy fighter escort. The planned campaign pattern for spring and summer 1944 involves frequent raids. Every few days, weather permitting, with tonnage allocations that far exceed tidal wave's one-day effort. Cumulative bomb tonnage over months will dwarf the single mission load. The strategy is attrition. Destroy faster than the enemy can repair, and sustain the pressure until refining capacity collapses. A planning paper explicitly states the objective: cut German oil output by 60 to 70% for an extended period. This reduction, planners believe, will immobilize Panzer divisions, ground the Luftwaffe, and force the Wehrmacht into defensive posture. Fuel starvation becomes the mechanism of defeat. Data from tidal wave directly inform the new approach. High losses but rapid enemy recovery demonstrate that single raids, no matter how large, cannot achieve lasting results against resilient, dispersed targets. The solution is persistence. Raid after raid, week after week, month after month, until repairs cannot keep pace with destruction. Fighter escort is critical. Tidal wave had no fighter protection. The mission distance exceeded the range of available escort fighters in mid-1943. By 1944, P-51 Mustangs with drop tanks can escort bombers all the way to Ploiești and back. Escort fighters engage German and Romanian defenders, suppress flak positions, and reduce bomber losses to acceptable levels. Synthetic plants in Germany are added to the target list. Planners recognize that destroying Ploiești alone will not cripple German fuel supply if synthetic plants continue operating at full capacity. The oil plan therefore includes targets across the Reich, Luna, Ploiești, Brux, and others. The campaign is comprehensive, not limited to Romanian crude. The projection used in planning papers is stark. If Romanian and synthetic output can be reduced by around 60% for several months, German ground and air operations will become logistically unsustainable. Fuel rationing will limit training. Operational reserves will evaporate. Units will be grounded for lack of gasoline. The Wehrmacht, starved of fuel, will lose mobility and offensive capability. The campaign is approved. 15th Air Force receives priority for oil targets. Bomber groups begin mission planning. Crews are briefed on the strategic importance of the oil war. And over Ploiești, Luftwaffe General Gerstenberg prepares for the onslaught he knows is coming. The systematic oil campaign begins in April 1944. It will continue, with relentless intensity, through the summer and into the autumn. And this time, the results will match the expectations. Final 15th Air Force mission reports over Ploiești are set against political reports from Bucharest in the days before the 23 August coup. The two narratives converge: military devastation and political collapse, each reinforcing the other. German command had expected Ploiești to remain a secure fuel base under strong flak and fighter protection. The expectation is shattered by cumulative United States Army Air Forces raids from Italy. Between April and August 1944, 15th Air Force mounted over 50 major raids on Ploiești and associated targets: rail yards, Danube ports, storage depots, and individual refineries. The statistics are overwhelming. Approximately 5,287 to 5,600 sorties are flown against Ploiești and related installations. Roughly 12,800 to 14,000 tons of bombs are dropped. The tonnage is 10 times the tidal wave load. The attacks are high altitude, heavily escorted, and relentless. Refinery output plummets. Astra Romana, Stoa Romana, Romano Americana, and Concordia are hit repeatedly. Processing units are destroyed. Tank farms burn. Power plants are knocked offline. Repairs are attempted but cannot keep pace with destruction. By midsummer, estimated refinery output had fallen to 10 to 40% of normal capacity, with average production cut by roughly 60% during the period. Allied assessments by mid-1944 classify Ploiești as largely neutralized as a source of Axis fuel. The phrase appears in Enemy Oil Committee reports and 15th Air Force intelligence summaries. It is accurate. Ploiești continues to produce some oil, but volumes are a fraction of previous deliveries. German fuel planners can no longer rely on Romanian crude. Political consequences follow military devastation. Romanian leaders watch as their country's primary economic asset is systematically destroyed. Soviet forces advance through Ukraine toward the Romanian border. German military power, once overwhelming, is visibly declining. The calculation shifts. Continued alliance with Germany offers no benefit and increasing risk. King Michael I and a group of senior Romanian officials plan a coup. On 23 August 1944, they arrested conjugator Ion Antonescu, declared a ceasefire with the Allies, and announced Romania's withdrawal from the Axis. Romanian forces turn against German units stationed in Romania. Fighting breaks out in Bucharest and other cities. The coup removes remaining Romanian oil from German access. German forces attempt to secure the Ploiești refineries, but are driven out by Romanian troops. Whatever production capacity survives the bombing campaign is now controlled by Romania's new pro-Allied government. German fuel planners must strike Romanian deliveries from their balance sheets entirely. The campaign totals are staggering. Over 5,000 sorties, over 12,000 tons of bombs, and sustained attacks over 5 months achieve what tidal wave's one-day effort could not. Permanent reduction of Ploiești's contribution to German fuel supply. The difference is persistence. Single raids allow rapid recovery. Sustained campaigns prevent recovery and compound damage. Allied oil analysis by September 1944 shows German petroleum, oil, and lubricants output fallen dramatically compared to 1943. Romanian oil is no longer part of the supply equation. Synthetic plants in Germany are heavily damaged. Captured stocks are exhausted. Fuel rationing begins across Wehrmacht units. Training flights are curtailed. Operational sorties decline. The Ploiești oil lifeline, once Germany's strategic anchor, is severed. The refineries stand in ruins. The transport infrastructure is shattered. And Romania, the country that had provided nearly half of German oil imports, is now an enemy. The consequences ripple through every theater. Panzer divisions immobilized, Luftwaffe sorties reduced to handfuls per day, naval operations contracted to defensive patrols. The systematic oil campaign has succeeded. Germany's fuel supply has collapsed, and the Reich, starved of the oil it fought so hard to secure, enters its final decline. Late-war German reports describe armored units parked for lack of fuel and Luftwaffe fighter groups restricted to a handful of sorties per month. Maps show shrinking operational radii. Panzer divisions that once rampaged across Europe now sit immobilized, waiting for fuel allocations that never arrive. Fighter squadrons with aircraft and pilots cannot fly because aviation gasoline is unavailable. In 1941, German planning had assumed secure Romanian oil, expanding synthetic capacity, and short campaigns. The assumptions are comprehensively disproved. Romanian crude is lost after August 1944. Synthetic plants have been heavily bombed throughout 1944, with production falling by over 90% in some months. Operational planning is now constrained by fuel rationing measured in liters, not tons. Post-war testimony from German generals and war economy officials cite the oil campaign and the loss of Romanian supply as decisive factors in Germany's defeat. Field Marshal Albert Kesselring states that fuel shortages limited mobility and prevented effective counterattacks. Minister of Armaments Albert Speer testifies that oil production constraints became the overriding limitation on German war-making capacity by late 1944. Statistical comparisons illustrate the collapse. Romanian crude production falls from 6.61 million tons in 1938 to approximately 3.53 million tons in 1944, and German imports from Romania cease entirely after August. Combine this with destruction of synthetic plants, which had provided 40 to 50% of German liquid fuel, and the aggregate effect is catastrophic. A post-war historical judgment describes German strategy as having been under the spell of oil, with Romanian fields central to both planning and eventual failure. The phrase captures the strategic dilemma. Germany needed Romanian oil to sustain operations, fought multiple campaigns to secure and defend that oil, yet ultimately lost both the oil and the campaigns. The causal chain is clear. Economic penetration of Romania in the late 1930s made Germany dependent on Romanian crude. This dependence drove the Balkan campaigns of 1941 to eliminate Allied air threats. Defense of Ploiești consumed enormous resources. Flak batteries, fighter squadrons, and logistical infrastructure diverted from other theaters. Operation Tidal Wave demonstrated Allied capability to strike Ploiești but failed as a single-raid strategy. The systematic oil campaign of 1944 succeeded where Tidal Wave failed, systematically destroying refining capacity over months. Romania's defection in August 1944 removed the last vestiges of the oil lifeline, and fuel starvation in late 1944 and early 1945 paralyzed German forces across all fronts. Each link in the chain is documented. Each cause produces a measurable effect. The result is operational paralysis. Armies that cannot maneuver, air forces that cannot fly, navies that cannot sortie. Fuel starvation does not win the war alone. Soviet offensives, Anglo-American advances, and material superiority all contribute. But fuel starvation ensures that Germany cannot resist effectively. Mobility is the foundation of modern warfare. Without fuel, there is no mobility. Without mobility, there is no hope of victory. The Wehrmacht, once the most mobile military force in Europe, ended the war. Panzers sit in rail yards. Fighters remain parked on airfields. U-boats lie idle in ports. The oil that was supposed to power Germany's conquest has run dry. And the Reich, unable to move, unable to fight, collapses. Germany's attempt to secure Romanian oil reshaped the Balkans and dictated major strategic choices. The Balkan campaigns, the fortress defenses, the desperate raids, and sustained bombing all were consequences of oil dependence. In the end, the loss and destruction of that same resource played a decisive role in the Reich's military paralysis and collapse. The oil lifeline that sustained Germany's war effort became the thread that, when severed, unraveled the entire strategy. If you value carefully sourced, fact-based military history, consider supporting the channel. What is your perspective on this part of history? Share your thoughts in the comments, because every memory and reflection helps keep the past alive.